Okay, so we're gonna do kind of like a summation of what we've done previously, meaning that we'll take bits from 3 weeks ago or 4 weeks ago that we have preserved. You may not, but you may have something from this past week as you were alerted to try to do, and how we can put together both these odds and ends, some stuff that's fresh, and the ideas that we learned, and put them into practice in several ways. And for the upcoming fall, where there's going to be a lot less produce, and obviously winter even less. So let's start. First of all, what do we got? We have all kinds of stuff. I've already showed you the leftovers, right? Those are set-asides, including a root of a cilantro, some ends of shallot, and anything that's tasty to begin with, that's not too strong. Like I would never put sage or thyme, as I said before, but any other vegetable, anything else. And I put cilantro on the side. The reason being that in some soups you may not want to have cilantro, but tonight or this evening, don't worry about how it looks. It still tastes really good. And in the soup with the beans, cilantro is amazing. So, like I said, here you go. Just keep stuff in your freezer. And here, Vanya, in her freezer, she kept some squash, some of which obviously was eaten one evening. We had extra, and it's all going to go in. And why don't we start? Oh, one more thing. Sorry. Beans. We have both the dry beans, as we've shown you previously, and any kind of dry beans that you would have soaked overnight. And of course, we have green beans. Green beans, two things. At the end of the season, you still will get some very fresh ones, which are going to be sweet. And you're just going to put them in a soup at the very end. We'll show you. And then eat them whole. Or some of the old ones, sometimes there's a special in the market, or you have your own garden. These are a little bit older, and while I'll put them into the soup whole because they still have a great deal of flavor to join in with the rest of the flavors, but you won't eat the outer shells because they're stringy and just not edible for humans. If you have a rabbit or a sheep, then they love it. However, after we've cooked them inside the shell, this is what we're going to retrieve, and they're amazing. They're like young beans, and it's an indescribable flavor, really. It's buttery, it's sweet, and it's delicious. So we're going to put that in the soup, and now we're going to start the actual doing. So the first thing is I'll cut off a piece. I'm sure you all know about that, but again, even from the onion, I'll take the outside 2 pieces. I might cut it in half again. Remember, we have lots of pieces over there anyways. And I'll keep this because I'm going to saute something later. And that's sort of like the heart of the onion. We don't need the whole onion. So I'll just put it in and start to saute. And by the way, you notice I didn't take the skin off. There's no need to do that.
So there's also just a little bit of oil and salt in that pan to saute.
Or butter if you want. We will put in carrots together with the onion. There's many people, and I'm a fence sitter. There are many people who say you don't need to brown the stuff, and I kind of agree. But in case you want it, especially the onion gives some flavor. If you get the onion sauteed a little bit before that helps you. And since these are partly frozen, why don't we throw some of these in? Okay.
Yeah, some of the squash. Get it
Yeah,
out of there.
I will.
So I guess for everybody at home who wants to sort of make the soup along with us, let's make
There.
sure, yeah.
See, just some frozen squash. And again, I have no feedback yet. Maybe never will get, but you are all invited to bring along whatever it is that you had from the last week, or even from 3 weeks ago, if you remember, to freeze some stuff. So now's the time for you, if you're cooking along, to take out your bag, as Lindsay demonstrated earlier, and we will, you know, kind of cook together, and we could be cooking totally different soups. I mean, totally different, clearly not, because we're going to have beans and we're going to have a stock, a vegetable stock, but any variation on it, and there are many, good luck, have fun.
So I usually start soup with onion for sure, carrot, and celery.
Yes.
Sometimes, well, I start a lot of things.
Celery,
It doesn't have
yeah,
to be
no.
with soup, but
No, I do it.
so.
Cut, yes.
Yeah, so we have some celery from the garden. So I'm gonna cut that in. Well, you just do big chunks, right? You don't
No,
even,
this is good.
because do you puree? Like if I do big chunks
Exactly,
of things,
yes.
if I'm gonna puree it at the end, but if I want it to be a chunky soup, I'll
No, this is good.
go with smaller little bits.
Which again is a good point for everybody to consider, and that is you can either cut them into pieces or have them whole. They still release their flavor, and ultimately, many people like to puree the soup either with a stick, an immersion blender, or in your food processor or blender. And I'm going to put these in.
Yeah, because I don't put the leaves
No,
at this point, but yeah,
I
just the
agree.
ends.
Well, it's the same thing with there's some things that we're not going to put in right away. However, maybe you can show them
Mhm.
what we do, because we're going to put the tomato in. I'll put these in, and I'll show you what we do with them. Okay.
Okay, so you want me to show them what we're gonna do
Yeah.
with this tomato?
Okay. So remember, we had a section on tomatoes, but this tomato here is ideal to demonstrate the principle. So kind of beautiful heirloom tomato, fresh off the vine. And it's not easy to cut into beautiful slices. So we cut the top off. Then in the center, of course, there's going to be 3 or 4 just perfect slices, which we will eat without you later on. So look, beautiful 3 slices. That could be, you know, your salad or beginning of the meal, and appetizer. Just put some salt on them. Now look what I've got left. I've got still a piece that I could do something with. So I'm going to cut this bottom off, and I'm going to leave this to the side because I happen to have
I feel
been.
like that's gonna burn those onions.
No, not
No?
yet.
Okay.
Thank you. So definitely good to pay attention. So these things here, we're going to cut later on. Doesn't have to, we don't have to show you how we cut. We're going to cut them, and we're going to incorporate them into a ceviche, which we're going to make tonight. And some of you will remember from earlier times. And here, that's just the leftover shoulders from the top and from the bottom. Just going to put them in the soup because beans love some acidity from the tomato. No, nothing's burning. No, perfect. Okay, great. Actually, what we do is we'll lower it a little bit. Did I lower it?
Yep.
Okay, lower it and cover it just for a minute, just as we're getting everything else ready.
Okay, smells really good.
Yeah,
Already smells good.
Actually, we can add the corn into it now. the idea is that you
What?
will add the, what's it called? Things that are sturdier. I can't think of another word right now. The more delicate leaves and stems of the cilantro, you're not going to put in right away. I mean, you're not going to put them in to fry. However, the ends of the shallots that I have and the corn that was previously grilled, those will benefit, and also the potatoes, which Vanya is now going to cut, and we're going to put them in.
Which I'm now gonna cut.
That's cute.
That is my cue.
I love it. It's almost like you know everything.
Why wouldn't you add some water now?
Yeah, good question. Why wouldn't you add some water?
I will
A little water to
well,
the pot before.
I mean, right now, no, because
Yeah.
I will add water very soon.
I know,
That's
but why
very
wouldn't you add a
correct.
little bit now to get it going? It's all frozen.
Because I want, because right now, what we're doing is we're sweating the stuff. I don't want any liquid in for the next, well, for the first, whatever it was, 4 or 5 minutes, and for the next 5, because what I want is for the heat to make whatever's in there sweat a little brown, and also meaning brown them for flavor, but at the same time eliciting some of the liquid. By the way, you notice, and I didn't mention it earlier, I now covered it. So anything that escapes from the tomato, onion, whatever, is not evaporating. Now everything gets covered at this point, okay? And yes, in about 4 minutes from now, I will, in fact, add liquid, and then I'll bring it up to a boil. We have some colorful potatoes too.
Oh, yeah.
That will show you. We're very proud of these. I think those two is enough. We don't need to use that, but I will put in, wait till you cut them.
Purple potatoes.
Yeah, but wait till you see them
Yeah.
cut.
Do I need to wash them?
They're
They're pre-washed?
I've
Okay.
washed. Apparently not perfectly because I see a bit of dirt here, but I washed them. And I'll tell you another thing that some of you may or may not appreciate. Sometimes, you know, whether it's a potato, especially if you don't peel them, which I recommend you don't, you know, there may be a little bit of dirt somewhere that you have missed. It doesn't really matter. Number one, it's boiling, so it's sterile when you are finished. And when you pour the soup off, if there's any sand or any grit, it always stays at the very bottom. So as long as you're careful and you don't just upend the, you know, if you don't upend the pot,
Yeah.
you know, you can always, now look at
I'm
this.
just looking at the color of these. It's really beautiful. Do you grow these?
Yes.
Lovely. And where did you get them from?
Oh,
This
actually, I
variety.
got them from a place in Alberta, but originally, but
Oh,
I've learned over the last few years,
Yeah.
this is a different color. Look at that.
wow.
And I've just kept the seed potatoes, just keep a few potatoes in a dark place with 3 bags, 3 whatever paper bags around them, and they will be okay for next year.
That must have a lot of polyphenols.
There it is.
Mhm.
Very good and very healthy. I think we have our cameraman.
Oh, yes.
Okay, so we're gonna put these in. We're gonna sweat them for a couple of minutes. And again, if you guys, even if you didn't have them ready, if you pick up a few potatoes and you want to cut them and put them in the soup, that's great. By the way, if any of you, as advised, have soaked some beans, get ready, because very soon you're going to put the beans in as well. But now we're just going to put the potatoes in.
So do you put the beans in before the water?
No.
No.
I'll put the beans
After.
in the fire. Oh, sorry, you're not going to see us now. Sorry about that. As you can tell, well, any of you who've seen this before will attest to at least my lack of professionalism.
So here's what it looks like in the pot. I think we need to turn the heat up.
Yeah, now we do, and we'll just put water in.
Okay.
So the things you wanted to sweat were more the onions.
Onion, carrot, celery, and squash, mostly
Mhm.
because it was frozen. Now also, look what I'm doing. I'm gonna empty my bag.
Oh, really?
Wow.
Wow. See, I've never done this.
Oh yeah.
Wow.
And my cilantro because
Right.
it's beans. And remember the beans I said that we're not gonna eat as a whole, but we're gonna shell them. We're gonna put those in, and I'm gonna cover it all with water. Can I do it?
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. So now we're gonna just put water. Oh,
Mhm.
bay leaf, please.
Okay.
You got it. Perfect. Thank you.
Yeah, so
So
we,
we're gonna add 3 or 4 bay leaves. We're gonna add some oregano. Turn off the water. And we're gonna add some parsley. And I think that's about it for now.
what's the sage for? I thought you said no sage in
No,
the,
no sage in the soup, but I thank you for prompting me. I'll tell you about the sage in a second, because
okay.
while I would never use it in any stock, even if you're gonna make sage soup, which I've never heard of, I still wouldn't use the sage in the soup. I would flavor it subsequently because it's so powerful. So we're gonna put it on to boil.
Would you turn that up?
I'm gonna check. I thought you did.
But
There
maybe
it
not
is.
enough,
Perfect.
yeah.
Okay. And we'll watch it, both of us, so it doesn't boil over. And then when it reaches boil, we'll simmer it. But now is the time to maybe talk a little bit, also listen to you guys, but talk a little bit about what it is that we're going to get out of it. So, for example, many of you probably buy these little carrots, in the stores for snacks or for lunches or for your kids. And once in a while, at the end of the lot, they get to be less than ideal. Don't throw them away. Keep them. They'll still impart flavor to the soup. So I'm going to put these 3 in the soup as well. Everything adds flavor. We got salt. I'm going to add some salt. There's some. This one here. Or-
I got lots.
Okay, yeah.
Choice,
So I'll
maybe
do
this
some
one?
of this.
Yeah.
You want to have at least, I'd say, flat, like not a heaping tablespoon of salt in there. And I'm going to put some pepper in, which, no, that's not pepper. So we're just going to grind some pepper in. By the way, you could also put peppercorns in. And while we wait for it to boil, I have at least one story that I have ready to tell you. Do you want to put that back in the freezer or just for the hell of it? Okay. So the story I want to tell you is obviously related to this soup making, and it gives you an idea of how simple it is to make amazing soups. And sometimes you could make them even as a side activity. Imagine that tonight we were not going to have this soup, which in fact may be the case for most of you and for us as well. We're getting ready some whatever, burgers or some pasta quick. We had a sauce ready because we did it last week. And all we have to do is boil water and put the pasta in, and we're having a quick meal. While you're doing all that, obviously not exactly simultaneously, but you could, at the same time that you're putting stuff away and putting stuff on the stove, you could have prepared those little things or 2 minutes before while you're eating this soup could be boiling without some of the final ingredients. When you're done eating, you turn it off, because you're not going to eat, unless, by the way, you are going to eat the beans, in which case we'll put the beans in maybe, I'd say 20 minutes, 25 minutes, which would put us near the end of this session. And then after 10 minutes, we'll extract those. Maybe we put a basket, like one of those baskets where you can put pasta or herbs in, so we can easily extract them and have them as a side dish. Sometimes I'll take 1 or 2 potatoes, cut them in half, and put them in for the last 15 minutes and just take them out. Now I've got potatoes that I, again, will not use today, but they will be either tomorrow or the next day. They're ready to do something like.
So you're using the boiling pot of water and the soup, which has a lot of flavor in it already at that point, to cook something you're going to use tomorrow and then pull it out.
Exactly.
So it's almost like this, the cauldron or something,
yes.
on the fire. And that's interesting. I don't know if I've ever done that.
Well, I have. And I found that it's quite useful, because in fact, it's kind of like a symbiotic relationship. The potato gains flavor from this really rich broth that will become that. By the way, there's another thing just occurred to me that I've done that I did not remember in my script. And that is, I'll take 2 or 3 ladles from the soup. From the liquid, and I'll put it aside. That's a vegetable stock for something else. And I still have tons for the bean soup that will only be eaten, well, unlikely today, because that's coming back to my story. I was in the market. I saw fresh beans, and I also saw some of these older beans that you saw me put into the stock. And then I went and I passed by a vendor that had all kinds of dry beans, right? Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And somehow the idea sort of coalesced in my mind what I was going to do. That's going to be like a 3 or 4 stage preparation. So remember, the basic thing now is the stock. This, other than the string beans, which are overripe, which will only impart flavor, and then we'll shell them and eat those today. Other than that, everything is for the stock and for the soup. And the soup will take place over 2, maybe 3 days. And that's what happened that time.
So can I ask a question?
Yes.
You put in all of the sort of skins and the cilantro, and I'm not going to want to find that in my soup at the end, right? I'm not going to be eating that. So what happens? Does that stuff float up to the top and you skim it? Or
most of it you do, and if not, you just take one of those slotted spoons and get them out. And you brought up another great point that I overlooked. If I'm going to use that soup and everything in it, I would not have put in the onion skins. I would not have put in all the roots, because I can't mix those, and I can't make
blend them
and make a soup. So today, I guess in a way I kind of screwed up, but you can recall what I just mentioned, and another time you make a soup that everything stays in, as Vanya said, and then you just put the immersion blender in. But today, in fact, we could do one of 2 things. We can skim the stuff, because the lighter stuff will come to the top. We'll show it to you, and then you could take the slotted spoon and get the stuff out, and you have a stock. Or you can just pour out the stock onto another pot. You have an amazing stock, which I can tell you could easily enjoy just as on its own, with throw in some of these beans. I mean, the string beans. If at the end of the day we have these beans, I'm going to cut them in half or into 3, depending on their size, and I'll take some of the stock, and we're planning to have dinner. We're going to have this beans, well, whatever, bean-centric stock that's going to be used just with these green beans.
Green beans and then some of the shelled beans.
Yeah, some of
from
exactly. These, by the way,
old green beans,
Overgrown.
string beans, overgrown string
Yes.
beans. And then where were these from? Also from the
oh my God. So here's an idea, just something else to share with you. As opposed to the beans that you see in the jar here, or the beans that you would buy, dry beans, either in a pack or from a vendor, these beans are ready to eat in like 2 minutes, maybe 3 minutes. Okay, they're fresh, and they don't need reconstituting. They're perfectly fine. So we would put them in when we put the green beans in. And anyways, so back to story. I bought these beans, and by the way, I love your questions because they remind me of stuff that I might have overlooked.
I'm gonna just check this out.
Yeah. So I bought the beans in the market. I bought some potatoes. I bought tomatoes. Well, you've seen what we did then, and I thought that's what I'm going to do. But the first day, all I did that day was make the stock and put some of these green beans and some of the shelled beans, but not the dried ones. And all I had was fresh beans and a little bit of stock, and the stock I left. I didn't even take anything out, just left it there. Turned it off at the end of dinner. So like I said, it cost me maybe 10 minutes, and 5 of them were overlapping with what I was doing that evening, whatever I was preparing. Turned it off. The next morning, and by the way, didn't refrigerate, did nothing. Just leave it on the stove. The next morning, whether you're making coffee, tea, or fried eggs, you just turn on the pot, bring it back to boil, and turn it off. That's it. All you're doing is making sure nothing grows in there, and nothing will at that time. So remember, this is one night. The next morning, you warm it up. That evening or that afternoon, you come home from work, you turn it on again, and now you're ready for the next stage of whatever it is that you're doing. You may decide, you know what, I want to take some of the liquid, and I'm going to, I bought something. I like to put some broccoli and some, some wontons, and I'm going to have a quick 1-bowl meal. You still have some stuff. In fact, you can even, if you feel that you've robbed the soup of too much liquid, you add a little bit of water or some other stock that you have preserved. But now is when I would put in the soaked beans, because now it's no longer just the stock in the making. Now you want the beans. By the way, you could have done that the night before if your intention was to have a bean soup the next day. So you put it in. However, I find bean soups are amazing if you make them over 2 days.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean always,
You mean you eat them after 2 days?
Yes,
Yeah.
but in this case, I even cook them over 2 days. In other words,
you just
I
keep
don't
turning that pot back on.
and on.
Yeah.
And don't forget, if I brought them to a boil and then even immediately turn it off, forget simmering, which is what usually you do with a soup for several minutes. The heat still works its magic for another 10, 20 minutes, depending what, and all the flavors incorporate. And remember, at first, the first time after you introduce the soaked beans, you do cook it for at least 30 minutes. But again, that could be during your meal. You don't have to watch it. You don't have to do anything. You bring it to a boil, lower it to a simmer, and that's it. And then the next day or the day after is when I had bean soup. But I made sure I had extra beans, because what I also wanted to do is create the starting point for a third meal. And the third meal was the beans with almost no liquid. I now refried them, and you make it like into a refried beans. You could use it with bacon. You could use it with cheese, or like the Mexican do, you make an enchilada. So basically from that one trip and a couple of things I saw in the market, I was inspired to create at least 3 other dishes, and I'm struggling to try and remember. I'm sure there was a 4th as well. And by the way, the tomatoes that I used for the soup at the time, same thing. I used some of it for guacamole. I used some of it just to eat the way it is, and the rest went in to flavor the soup. And I'd really like it if somebody told us now what you've been doing so far this evening with your leftovers or your set-asides, and if you have any questions. No? It's all perfectly clear? Come on, Lindsay, you got at least one question in you. Oh, for some reason I can't hear you. Hold on. Why am I not hearing
Oh,
you?
she's muted. She was muted.
There we go.
Okay.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can.
Perfect.
So we need one question.
Yeah, I can speak to what I'm making. So
Okay, tell
I'm
us.
kind of going towards more the refried beans that you were talking about. I didn't have as many vegetables. I had like a pepper and some celery. I skipped the bag of veggies because I had a bunch of like peppers and seeds and stuff like that in there that yeah, I didn't want to get into the soup, so I'll save that for another time. But yeah, boiling up, I just added my beans to celery and
So your
onion
beans-
and pepper. So it's gonna be more of, I guess, like it'll be more solid, like a stew, or
Well, that's
like
cool.
I was thinking maybe blending it if it cooks down enough into
Yeah.
more of like a refried bean, something like that. Yeah, and I had a little bit of leftover salsa.
Yeah.
So I like rinsed out the bottom and added
Perfect.
that.
Yeah.
But
Great.
that's pretty much it. I don't know that
No,
I have a
but
question, but that's what I'm making.
That's great. No, but that's exactly a great idea. The idea of rinsing out the bottom of the salsa, take that and put it into the soup. That's awesome. That's really a good idea. And the same thing you can do with, for example, I'll give you examples. You reminded me of something that I do. If I have the bottom of a jam jar, very little, sticking to the sides, I'll put some vinegar in, some salt and garlic, and I'll make a salad dressing out of it.
Oh, it has a little bit of a fruity blueberry.
So it's the same thing. You don't waste anything, and it's not a matter of not wasting because you're so noble. It's a matter of that you're extracting the most benefit out of everything that you have. I use, like, I don't know if any of you have done that, but for example, when you're done with a jar or one of those squeeze bottles of mustard.
Yeah,
Guess
I've
what?
done that. Yeah.
Don't throw that away. Put some vinegar, put some lemon, put some olive oil and
Shake it
some
up.
herbs, shake it up, and you got a mustardy dressing. And it's not really mustardy, it's just some added flavor, unless you use a mustard that has kernels in it, and you can make that the feature. But I would use your jar and any other jar pretty well for some other purpose before I throw it away or rinse it and keep it so that I could freeze stuff. How's the water going?
Good. I
Is
think
it boiling yet? Oh, the water's boiling. So,
I throw these celery leaves in.
yeah. And we're also going to put the beans in. Sorry?
Were you planning your soup to be a stock or a soup, or were you planning something else? Because you put in a lot of stuff.
Yes.
That
I'm planning my stock, my whatever it is, I'm planning to make a stock right now, because in my world, I could not make the bean soup this quickly while you guys are there.
Okay, so you're going to
sharing-
strain, ultimately you're going to strain your soup.
Yes, my stock. This is not a soup yet. So what I'm going to
Your
do
stock,
now.
you're going to strain, whatever you have in that pot, you're going to
Yes,
strain and use the
pretty
liquid
well.
to make something with it.
Yes.
And
but
what
I'm
are you
going
gonna do with the stuff that's in the strainer?
There are two things. I was just going to say the potatoes, which are cut into slightly larger pieces, we will get most of them out and keep them for another soup or for the bean soup, or half of them for the bean soup. Half of them can be fried. That's the other thing. Not fried, but when you make, well, I guess you can make fried, or I can't think of what people hash browns. So you can make hash browns with the potatoes that are out of the soup. They're now flavorful and they're cooked. So within 2 minutes, you can add whatever flavor you want, and you make great hash browns.
Mm-hmm.
And if
So
you've cut them the way I've said earlier, I mean, I suggested I sometimes do. If you cut them into two, I extract them, and then I'd have the potatoes another time. The only thing that I'm going to throw away, and again, this is because today I was so focused on making the bean soup and show you the different stages that I didn't think about the immersion part. But typically what I would do, if that's what I want to do, as I said earlier, I would take clean parts, and as Vanya demonstrated, I cut the pieces to medium-sized pieces, and then everything gets left in, including some thin cilantro roots, and maybe a celery root, maybe a parsley root if you get it, and everything gets blended, and then you get a thicker soup, depending on how much of the potato and also the beans that you blend. So we're going to.
So you can tie them up in a string. Ultimately, tie those things in a string before you put them in the soup, so you can just pull out the stuff you don't want to puree.
I've done that too with cheesecloth or bathing suit liners that are those meshy things. I've always before, if something, especially one of my kids' bathing suits became either unwearable, I couldn't hand it down to anybody else, I would always take the inside, which is this mesh, and I could tie that up, and I put the herbs and anything that I want to take out, I put in there. By the way, sometimes I do the reverse. Like, for example, what we're doing now. Remember, I cut some of these beans. Let's say I had not yet separated solids from liquid. I would take these, put them in cheesecloth, cook them in the stock, so they will benefit obviously from the cooking and from the flavor of the stock. But then I take them out, and I'm just going to have them with some olive oil and salt, which is the best way to enjoy these and most beans, in my opinion. So we're going to put them in now. Oh, we should show them. Do you want to do me a favor? Yeah. So you see now we're lowering this, but look, it's happening, and you see the corn is up there, and tomatoes, and I'm just looking to see that we lower it a little more. And now, actually, what I can also do, which I've also done, sometimes these that are a little deeper. Some of these slotted spoons.
I have this.
Yeah, perfect. See,
Do this.
perfect, exactly. Thank you. That's brilliant. See, I put them in here.
So yeah, you're using
they're
it like
doing-
this flavored
they're doing-
cooking water.
Yes, they're doing the stock a favor, and the stock, that's okay. If you now put the top on, it'll steam, and all you need these for is about 3 or 4 minutes.
That's very cool.
Yes, it is. And like I said, it benefits both the liquid as well as the beans, because most of the time people cook beans in water, and that's the way I used to do it too. But then one day it occurred to me, hey, why don't I do that? And here, these beans, they're going to go, these shelled beans. Remember, there's other beans that we're still going to shell. They're cooking, but I'm just going to put them right into that same basket. And they'll steam and cook. And of course, they're bigger strainers. But now I want to take a moment. I reminded myself this time. Why do I have the sage against which I counseled earlier. There's nothing better with beans, with possibly something called summer savory, but we'll leave that for now. Sage is amazing with beans. It's also amazing with kinds of meat, but we're talking about vegetables here. So I would take sage, which is really easy to get and also easy to grow, even in a pot. Every summer, bring it in. This is a perennial that'll last forever. And if you have a little plot, even between your flowers, put some sage in. Do yourself a favor.
You don't even have to bring it in.
Yeah,
Just
no,
keep it in the garage, yeah.
but the pot you might. If you
Oh, if it's
grow it in a
yeah.
pot, even if it's a perennial, the pot somehow exposes it in a way
True.
that it's not exposed in the garden.
True.
You know? So yeah, what I meant is bring it in if it's in a pot, but otherwise, you even at a base of a tree or, rose bushes, whatever it is that you have, if you have, or maybe even a neighbor will let you do it. I've done that. I've gone over to a neighbor and said, hey, you got this hedge here. Why don't I grow some shallots and we can share them subsequently. And they're actually nice to look at and they're great to taste. So you'll chop these. I think we actually did that in our first session, but because it's beans, I'm going to come back to it. If you chop these sage leaves quite finely, and that's not my forte, but whatever it is, you just chop them like that, and then you maybe chop them a couple of times sideways. What you want to do is take your smallest skillet or frying pan and put some, maybe 2 tablespoons of butter. I will make available to you a printout of whatever this is, in case you're interested. But you put some butter and you'll basically brown the butter. When the butter is sizzling and, browning, you'll take these shallots, obviously, the sage, and put a whole lot of it in. And maybe leave it in for a minute, no more than that. Could be even be less. You don't want this to burn, although the butter can be brown, and that's great, actually adds flavor. You turn it off. Having previously, or while whatever it is that you're doing, chopped some garlic into, I'd say medium, not chunks, but definitely not fine. You've turned the fire or heat off. The sage is still in the skillet, and obviously I don't have to tell you, it's going to be pretty hot. You wait for another minute off the fire, then you add some oil to it, and I forgot, but probably you figured out salt is definitely necessary at the beginning. So you've taken it off the heat, and it's on this side on your cooktop, and maybe a minute later, because you don't want to do it at the height of heat, you add some olive oil, which will now cool it down a little bit further. And that's when you introduce the garlic. You'll see it still cooks, but it won't burn. The result is one of the most amazing things, and you can make a ton of it, or maybe only half a ton.
So
And
sage, salt, butter, then olive oil, garlic.
yes, and olive oil could be double the amount of the initial butter, because basically the butter, it'll add flavor, but you want to be able to bring it to that browning point and put the sage in. It's truly, not only is it amazing with beans, and if you like chicken or any kind of lighter meats, although I'm not going to tell you that it's bad with hamburger either, but it's usually, the way I usually eat it is with beans, fresh beans or reconstituted beans. And you could subsequently, you can cool it. You could probably put it in, whether it's an ice cube tray, or you can also, if there's enough butter in it, when it cools down, it'll solidify, and you can make like a roll, and you can freeze that and keep it for ages. And if you put it in the fridge, it'll keep for a couple of weeks with no problem. And you could use it even on a pizza. If you either make your own pizza or you have pizza delivered one night and you want to raise the level of quality and taste, put some of this, or like previously discussed, either a hot sauce that you made or the arugula or basil pesto. But this sage thing, you have to try it once. It's truly unreal. You've never tried it?
I've never tried
Well,
it.
I
I have a lot of sage too.
Yeah. Oh, it's so easy to grow.
Yeah.
So you do that. Let's have a look at the water. And see, if you bring it in, see, the beans are cooking. In fact, you can see the shelled beans, the ones that are in, have changed color. You notice they're a little more green now than they were. They were white previously. Look at this one here. It's green. And we're just going to leave it here for another couple of minutes and then take it out. And in this case, with the green beans, I would not use the sage butter because it overwhelms them and they have such a great taste on their own. I wouldn't bother. But anything else, Mexican, Italian, or North American, use that sage. Thanks. Okay, any more questions? Well, any questions? No, I guess we had some.
How about a comment?
Comment, yes, please.
Comment, yeah. When I was out before we started picking parsley, I noticed that my sage is absolutely magnificent.
Yes.
And I was going to be asking you for ideas of what to do. Now, we eat very little meat. Long ago, we used to have it with chicken and turkey, but
Yeah.
I know I like to make just a dressing. With rice, cook up your celery, onion, and garlic, and lots and lots and lots of sage and apple and chopped apricots, and that makes really good to have with anything at all. But do you have ideas for how to keep it? How to keep the sage? Like, should I just tie up bundles in a room? Yes.
Well, that's another great thing about sage, apart from the taste. Okay, I'll answer that, then I'll go back to other ideas. Yes, all you got to do is, because it's probably the highest oil content, perhaps tied with rosemary, but I don't know exactly, but so it doesn't dry for a long time. So you could use it, for 2 or 3 or 4 weeks without any real change, a little bit of textural change. And later on, when it dries, that's when, and again, just hang it up, like you said, and when it dries, then you use it and you cook it. And the garlic sage butter is also, well, I mean, it just tastes so good. Your question or your comment reminded me that, yes, I've used it with rice, and I've also used it with potatoes, on mashed potatoes.
And can you freeze that garlic sage butter thing?
Absolutely.
Because it's got a lot of oil, so
You could freeze it
have a little jar. You can have little jars of
for a year. For a year.
Right.
And more, like you'll never regret having some sage oil butter in your freezer, because there's so many uses for it. Sometime if you barbecue, if your kids, well, I don't know about the kids, but if somebody likes, sausages or hot dogs, it's a great dressing to add to it, because almost everybody likes garlic, especially, when it's roasted, and sage is just amazing. So yes, with rice, I've used it with quinoa. I've used, by the way, it's excellent also to use when you make lentils, as you probably know, because I know you're an experienced cook. Lentils are one of the things that we tend to flavor after we cook. We don't do much with the lentils. We learned that from both Indians and Italians. You just cook the lentils, sometime in some stock, sometime just in water, and then you add whatever flavors you want, whether it's tomato-based or herbal or sage or pepper, like red pepper to give it some additional flavor. You always flavor it after. So sage is excellent for that because, number one, you've got it on hand, but it goes well with any legume or pulse, which are closely related and often confused for being legumes. Pulses being chickpeas. I think lentils are pulses as well. And there's other sort of halfway between grass and beans. And you use that with the sage and the garlic. I mean, every time I have it, I think, well, why didn't I have it, more recently? Because it really is an extraordinary taste.
Now, as to what we're doing today, I have made, well, right now it's so thick that it's almost like a vegetable stew.
Yeah.
I have lots of liquids in the freezer. We have frozen a lot of our own green beans and keep all that. So there's my liquid. I've got 3 or 4 different kinds of tomatoes in there, celery, onion, and garlic, and carrots. I grated in a whole lot of zucchini as well as crookneck squash, and took the corn off the corn cob. And that's what we're going to eat for tonight.
But you took the corn off. You took the corn off, and you incorporated it into the soup.
Right.
Okay, so here's my suggestion for next time. Take the kernels off, put the cob in without the kernels, and add the kernels at the last minute, or maybe even after, just as you're serving the soup. Because, if it's fairly fresh corn, or even the frozen corn, all it needs is 1 minute, to heat it up. You don't want it in that soup the whole time. So use the cob and not the corn. The corn should be added the way I just added the beans, a lot, even later. Because the corn, if you buy corn at this time of the year or last couple of weeks in Ontario, you could eat it off the cob without even cooking it.
Yes.
I don't know how many of you have done that, but I rarely make it back from the market without having eaten one corn. Anyways, let's see. Now we're going to lower it. Now, actually, we're here. Okay, so let's take one of these. There we go. Thank you. See, these are ready now. See, they're all cooked. The liquid is there. And that's going to be, there's a little squash. Yeah, the squash got in from underneath. But that's going to be interesting. It's going to be flavorful. And all we're going to do with this is maybe put some salt and some olive oil. This is a side dish worthy of getting excited about. And what I'll also show you, actually you can turn it off.
Okay.
So remember what I said the other day, the other minute, that we are going to leave this liquid here, and tomorrow Vanya will start off again. However, we're going to take out these big beans. I'm going to put them in.
Yeah, let me give you something to put them in.
Anything. Yeah, perfect. I got it. Okay, so I'm going to take these beans out. I'm going to let them cool a little bit, but they will not have lost the contents. But remember, they're sweet. If you were going to try them, I wouldn't want to ingest it, but for the flavor, the outside is still sweet and tasty. It's just not something you want to eat. But the inside, where the pods contain all the beans, they're going to be excellent. And I think I got them all. the one that is still there is not good. And by the way, at this point, what I also do is I'll take 1 or 2 carrots out, because guess what? They're delicious. Just eat them. And you can see, coming back to Rachel's question early, that if I wanted to at this point, it'd be easy for me to take out, you see, like all these strings and all the components that will not be blended. And then I'll leave everything else, including the tomatoes and the celery leaves. See, all this comes out, no problem. The rest, now we're going to put the beans in, cook them once, and then again tomorrow. And then we can decide how much of the beans we want to incorporate into a paste and make it a thick bean soup, or do we want to make it a soup with lots of vegetable chunks and potato chunks? Because again, tomorrow or the next day, you just add stuff. Whatever it is that you're cooking, you're going to have something left. Add it to the soup and decide how you're going to eat it.
So the real lesson for me today is the importance of the stock here in making the bean soup really delicious, right? I mean, that's what and what else you can be doing with the stock, while it's cooking down.
I know you're going to believe me, but you're going to doubt me because I have a vested interest, but you taste this.
Okay.
That's for you. Because I know you're not going to lie. I might lie, but you won't.
Wow.
See,
there's a lot a lot going on in there that if I didn't know the ingredients that were in there,
right,
it'd be hard to figure out.
No, I know. But the point is, it's not anything that we did. We just boiled water. It's just that you put in, as I said once before, you put in a bunch of good things.
Yeah.
It's flavorful, and it's the starting point for lots of things. For you can make a stew with it. You want to make some what's it called? Ginger carrot soup, which is gaining a lot of favor these days. Just get more carrots, use the stock, put some ginger, a little bit of orange zest, maybe a squeeze of 1 or 2 orange sections, and you've got an amazing soup. Or a squash soup, or pumpkin is coming into season. This is the beginning of so many delicious outcomes.
So for the bean soup,
yes,
it's at this point that you add them. You remove whatever you have, and you'd be adding those soaked beans.
Soaked beans. Yeah. No, the fresh beans I wouldn't use for soup. Fresh beans are so good.
I agree.
By themselves.
Yeah.
I don't. I use the dry beans. I'll take out the corn and everything. I now have the stock, and that's it. But after I've taken everything out, I will then, with the beans, I will add some chopped cilantro, chopped parsley, and that stays. That never comes out. And by the way, having tasted it, you did. I'll taste it and I'll see, well, maybe it's a little too, salty
or sweet. Maybe you need to add some acid.
Exactly. So that's so easy to do because, you add a tomato or a couple of tomato shoulders, or you add a pepper. So it's really easy to balance and to see what flavors you like most. Notice we haven't had any garlic in it. At some point, you might want garlic depending on what it is that you want to get at the end. And that's that. That's the story. And I think we're pretty well close to the end.
We are 1 minute from the end.
Oh my God. So it's going to be kind of kind of interesting for us to eat this. And hopefully, if you're not doing any of this or didn't do any of this today, hopefully you'll get something out of it that you will try, if not tomorrow, then sometime in the near future, because there's lots of stuff coming in, including, by the way, the last comment I'll make is, they have sometimes baskets of tomatoes that they sell at a discount or because they're not perfect. Guess what? They're perfect for the soup. And if they have a blemish or two, you cut it off, put it in a soup. That's what our grandmothers did.
Yeah. Well, what I got out of it is this way to use all the ends, the kitchen scraps that, you know, I end up putting in the organics,
Yeah.
right? Because it adds a complexity, a real complexity.
Yes.
Because I do make vegetable soups a
Yes.
lot, but I don't,
Yeah.
I have not been doing this. So it's interesting how much more complex it is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you can use for example, some of this liquid if you're starting a rice dish, or if you're making a pasta sauce,
Mhm.
you know, depending on what it is. Obviously, if it's tomato sauce, you don't need to waste this.
No, but if it's like a white pasta,
Exactly, a white
then you can add
sauce.
this for.
All kinds of.
Yeah,
There's
for sure.
pasta with spinach, with kale.
Mhm.
There's pasta with broccoli pieces or rapini.
Yeah.
You use that.
It's kind of like a French kitchen that always adds veal stock to everything, right? And that
Yeah,
just gives
poor
it that-
veals, yeah.
Poor veals.
Anyways, here we are. If you have any questions, be happy to answer. If not, I'd be happy to say goodbye.
I just want to say thank you so much. Oh, am I here?
Yes, thank you.
Just thanks. It was lots of fun. I myself am incapable of throwing away the vegetable water when I cook. I always
There
keep
it
it in the freezer because I don't want to throw away the flavor and the nutrients. So I always have something like that. But now I'm going to take your tip of when you have a really good stock like that, to save a few ladles for the
Yeah.
next one. That's a great idea. Thank you so
Thank you.
much.
Well,
It
thank
was
you. I'm
wonderful.
glad. Yes, and I look forward to meeting you people in person perhaps next year. And I hope you got something out of it. Great, thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank
Okay.
you.
All right, cool. Take care.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Bye. Deborah T left. And everybody leaves. So now we can leave. Leave. Thank God.
Leave here.
Oh my God, I gotta taste this. Because I bet you it's not bad. Oh my God. But you notice it's not enough salt. But that's what we would do. Would you agree or not?
Yeah, I almost wonder if we need more tomato in it too.